We simply wanted to find a good alternative, a good enough alternative. Can we make a difference with a nutraceutical, with botanical ingredients? And can we be as effective or even more effective than a drug without the side effects? There's no such thing as cutting corners when it comes to health. How many supplements are out there that don't work? I feel very troubled about just even thinking about what's currently being sold and offered to people who are suffering health-wise and the potential consequences of those solutions.
I really want to get into creating value in the world and sort of the mindset and how you think about all that. But to start with, for our listeners, let's get into kind of the origin story. What led to starting Nutrafol? And you were actually a mechanical engineer. You had your own business for a while, which is super cool. But what led you to getting into this? And then we'll talk a little about the journey and then dig into the other stuff on creating value.
Yeah, absolutely. I owned an engineering business, but I didn't necessarily feel I was adding too much value to the world, and it was just very personal. Hair was personal to me. I really didn't want to lose it, and I was struggling with the side effects that I was experiencing using the pharmaceuticals that were available, and that was problematic because just going to dermatologists and hair transplant surgeons, they didn't have enough answers to my questions. And I was always trying to figure out ways to target hair loss in a different way, because every single time I actually stopped using the drug, my hair started to fall out. So that was devastating. And just even by going to physicians, asking simple questions as what is at the root of all of this, right? I'm incredibly stressed. Obviously at the root of stress is cortisol. Why can we not address that somehow, right? Because I knew that some of those pharmaceuticals were simply targeting one specific factor. In this case, it was DHT, which is the genetic component, right? Dehydrotestosterone, and typically that's what's linked to hair loss for men. So just simply addressing that singular root cause didn't feel enough, because I always felt that the problem was multifactorial. And I tried to find an alternative that was simply healthy and effective, and everything that was effective was associated with side effects, and everything that was healthy was simply not working. So, and that's around the time where I met my business partner, Roland Peralta, and he was trying to reverse engineer his rheumatoid arthritis. And he did that very successfully. And that really what sparked this thinking and this conversation around inflammation and potentially other root factors that are associated to thinning hair and hair loss. We always believed that hair is a reflection of what's happening from within, right? Hair is a reflection of your inner wellness. And so if you would bring the body back to homeostasis or a state of balance, then the hope was that by addressing those root causes, that you can change the course of your hair, essentially, right? So it wasn't just a genetic component that we believed was important. It was a multitude of root causes, including cortisol, inflammation, dietary deficiencies, etc. So I was always trying to somehow add value to the world, and I tried to figure out what kind of business can I start to make a difference. It was only until I really started to focus on myself and to figure out, okay, what are the problems that I'm experiencing on a daily basis, and can I figure out a solution around that to and essentially evolve from there.
And this was part of your job in your 20s. You were a fashion model, right?
Yeah, that's it seems forever, but yeah, that was I was very blessed to be able to travel the world and make some money and truly explore and figure out who I am as a person. So yeah, so as you can imagine, losing your hair as a fashion model, that was that was a non-starter to say the least. So yeah, I it was important to me for that reason, but hair is a part of someone's identity, and especially when you're young and you evolve, it's just tricky. And it wasn't necessarily the losing the hair, and this is also what we figured out over time with Nutrafol. It was really that loss of control that I was struggling with, and what people in general struggle with. It's almost like, okay, now it's out of control. You can't really um, control your own destiny anymore. What's going on with me, right? And that can be quite terrifying.
It's really challenging as I was going through the SLE, systemic lupus, watching how other folks with the same condition were deteriorating. It became pretty apparent that most of the deterioration was coming from side effects from the drugs they were taking, the
Mhm.
immunosuppressants, all the steroids, and so many
Mhm.
other things. And I went for more naturopathic approaches. I put in hyperbaric oxygen. I did all kinds of stuff, really
Nice.
looked at diet, looked at recovery, looked at everything. Had none of those side effects around organ failure, joint failure. And and so I'm curious as I was, looking at Nutrafol's website and doing research, getting ready for this. How did you go down the path to come up with treatments that have, I'm assuming, virtually zero side effects, or are there side effects to your drugs? Because I've gotten to a point where I don't trust anything. I was listening to a pharmaceutical ad the other day, just happened to be on in the background from a
Yeah.
podcast, and one of the side effects was you could lose your limbs. Like, oh my gosh, like, what are we doing here? And if they said it, it must be happening. But people are willing to take that risk. So, yeah, how'd you think about that? How did you come up with it? And are there side effects with the products?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I appreciate your approach because I think it's essential and important when you suffer from an issue, right? Or whether it's a disease or autoimmune disease or anything in life, it's like to do enough research to truly look what's available. Because I'm not against drugs whatsoever. I think drugs can be extremely helpful, as we really well know. It's just that when it comes to hair loss, why would you jeopardize your health in order to keep your hair, right? To me, um, that was not an option, and I hit the panic button at in year 9. I was on Propecia for about 9 years, and it was a new study that came out that proved that there could be permanent sexual dysfunction post discontinuation of the drug, right? So so that's obviously terrifying. You stop using the drug and your side effects do not go away. So in our case, we had to find an alternative to that. And we knew that just basic vitamins and minerals would not be strong enough to make a difference or effective enough to make a difference. This is in 2015, and the nutraceutical industry was rising. And that was great because as we educated ourselves around the efficacy of those nutraceutical ingredients, I got personally very excited because some of them are using pharmaceutical grade standards to produce those or to further optimize them. Sometimes it's for their activity or bioavailability, the absorption, etc. So, and a lot of those nutraceuticals are not just herbals, right? It's Eastern thinking, right? They address health and some of those root causes. But at the same time, those nutraceuticals or those um, suppliers who are specialized in certain ingredients, they do clinical trials on those ingredients, which was a key differentiator, right? Just to put an ingredient in a formulation in a supplement and simply borrowing the science was not enough, right? That's not something we could get excited about. But for example, a very potent anti-inflammatory such as curcumin, I'm sure you're familiar with curcumin. Um, Amazing. I think it's an amazing ingredient, and it's very well studied. I believe it's one of the most studied botanicals on the planet because of its properties. We found a great manufacturer in India that specialized in curcumin, and they had a form that was very bioavailable, and it actually had evidence that it can lower CRP significantly in a matter of months. That's exciting, right? Um, so so we identified those nutraceuticals, and that was really the beginning and the birth of the cocktail that we received our patent on, because it was not just the anti-inflammatory ingredients. It was the antioxidants, and it was the DHT inhibitor that was addressing the genetic component. So we simply wanted to find a good alternative, a good enough alternative. Can we make a difference with a nutraceutical, with botanical ingredients? And can we be as effective or even more effective than a drug without the side effects? And many of those ingredients, as you probably know, are GRAS approved. So yes, there's safety there, which is great. Of course, we had to look at the dosages, because there's not a lot of there's some there's some studies, of course, on dosages, and there's some guidelines, but we had to do extensive research with our scientific team and our physicians to make sure that what we're putting in the product is going to be very effective, but on a longer term basis, it cannot create any damage. We spent about 1.5 years to just shoulder to shoulder with my business partner, with a bunch of physicians and scientists, to write a white paper around the mechanism of action of hair biology, and the product, to make sure that it was differentiated enough, not just for ourselves, but also for the world. That research now is published, and is something that we're very proud of.
And how long were you in clinical trials to prove this out, and what were the results from that? And I'm assuming you had a group of men and a group of women doing both sides of this.
Yeah, so in the beginning, because it was all self-funded, we launched without a clinical trial, because we wanted to test out the product, and um, we essentially made claims related to the ingredients. That wasn't obviously good enough for us, but that was a great way for us to get samples and give it to our friends and family to start seeing the results. And the results were remarkable. I remember walking into a very high end hair salon in New York City, and we had a men's and a women's formulation. And I expected the men's formulation to be very in demand, and it was exactly the opposite. That was a big aha moment for me. So from the beginning, we all believed, obviously men and women have different biological systems, and in order to really make a difference there and be a bit more personalized from the get go, we decided to split up the formulations, and making sure we have something a bit more targeted for the specific genders. And yeah, that was a great moment for me, because I saw the demand that women had around just hair health, and that's where these were my first interactions, where I recognized that there was not just a demand, but there was a lot of emotional concern around hair loss for women. Obviously, we know that this is an issue for men, and we know there's an issue for women, but I had no idea that it was that significant. Um, so the clinical trials, we after launching, we doubled down on those as well, as we got some investment in. We didn't have to do that, and which is still something quite crazy in the United States. You don't necessarily have to do a clinical trial on a fully formulated product. So you can essentially you can formulate something for whatever condition, and you can put ingredients together, and borrow some of the science and make some claims, and you can go to a third party packer or manufacturer, and you can essentially start selling a supplement, which I think is quite dangerous. That's why there's so much supplementation out there that simply doesn't work. There's a lot of snake oil out there as well, um, because people think that they can launch a supplement and make some quick bucks. So that was not something that we wanted to pursue. So even though we didn't have to, we decided to double down on the clinical trial. And these trials were millions of dollars because a clinical trial on hair is quite complex. It's first of all, it's 6 months. It's placebo controlled, and yeah, dropout rates typically with lengthy studies are high. We had also 2 sites in the beginning, two multi-site studies. So we're closely working with physicians to make sure that if we produce additional data, it's credible and it's validated and it's third party. So we did that, and yeah, the results were remarkable. And as the company evolved, we continued to do clinical trials on the women's product, on the men's product, different ethnic groups, different ages, to further personalize the formulations and making sure that we have enough data to make to validate the claims that we're making and that we're adding value to our customers.
So it's not one supplement for men, one supplement for women. There's different supplements depending on how, when you go to the website, there's a survey that you can take. And so once you learn about them, are there different supplements for these different categories that you're talking about?
Yeah, so there's about four core products. One of them is for men. The other one is for women. The other one is for women that are going pre and post menopause. That became our blockbuster a product, surprisingly, but that's still doing amazingly well. And then a core product that I was very excited about because my wife was going through postpartum, and women are losing a lot of their hair post baby. So, um, yeah, we launched a postpartum core product, which is still doing extremely well. But these are the core products. But then we introduced booster products as well. So based on your your lifestyle or your life stage, we're able to personalize the experience with additional boosters. And we would also introduce diagnostic tools. So we take a snippet of your hair, and your hair tells a story, right? It's forensic. So we'd analyze it in our labs and would figure out ways to further support our customers and patients at scale. That was really cool. I always liked to further understand what's going on, because the reality is that we all have different lifestyles and you can't control everything. As a company, as you offer a product to someone, if your microbiome is very off and you're not absorbing food in general, right? You can take a supplement, but it doesn't mean it's going to be effective enough. So what else were we able to understand and optimize for our people became very important for us to understand. And that's one of the main reasons why the company started to grow exponentially, because we started to truly understand what matters to people and how we can set them up for success.
Yeah, incredible. Have you found that heavy metal toxicity can play a role in hair loss? And the reason I
Yeah,
bring
that's a
up,
great question. Yeah.
I worked in an electroplating company a long time ago, and that was back when they said you could drink the chemistry; it's perfectly fine. So my hands all day long were in lead and cadmium and nickel and other things.
Wow.
And I did a hair analysis, and it came back so high in those things that I was joking at the time. I'm going to take my driver's license right under organ donor. I'm going to we'll donate body for scrap metal. But I went
Oh
through
my God.
I went through probably over 4 or 5 years, because the equilibrium chemistry just takes a while to get out of the body. But I went through maybe 230 different chelation treatments, EDTA.
Really?
And now I'm on everything, below the national average on all of those metals I had before. Cadmium, lead, and nickel were the big ones that were going along. So other than maybe a small twitch, I'm all recovered now from all of that.
Well, I need to know what your protocol is for chelation and detoxification. I think everyone needs it, given the exposure. I think you're right on there, because Yeah, I was very high on in aluminum. Also, I also figured that out through hair testing. And I went to my naturopathic doctor. She was at Nutrafol, and yes, how am I? I'm pretty healthy. How am I so toxic? Like toxic levels aluminum within my body. And the first question she asked me is like, "What kind of deodorant are you using?" It's like that was it, right? And and early on, because of these understandings, um, yeah, we developed algorithms online, and even the diagnostics, the online diagnostic tools still have those. They still include those questions like, "Are you what kind of what kind of water are you drinking? Right? Is it out of a plastic bottle, glass bottle, tap water, etc. Or what kind of deodorant are you using?" And we would witness people do those diagnostics, and they would so surprised. They would all have those aha moments. It's like, "I'm here for my hair, and you're asking me what kind of deodorant I'm using." So it was this huge educational moment. Forget about us selling products. It's like there was so much value and that we added throughout that process because people would become aware that hair loss is it has to be approached holistically, right? It's health, really. Your hair health is depending on your inner health. So what can you do to optimize it? So happy that you recognize, right, the importance of regulation of those heavy metals, because we're not talking about hair, but obviously we also understand that it can lead to disease on a longer term basis. So yeah, I wish there were more proven methods that were available to basically the everyday, not just the biohacker individual, but the everyday person, right? For them to have the ability to detoxify themselves, because yeah, it's quite off balance.
Yeah, and bad stuff can be in just about everything. In lotions, you mentioned deodorant. I look to make sure no aluminum is present in any of the products that I use that way.
Yeah.
Shampoo, laundry detergent. I mean, it's like literally everywhere, and we have to be aware of it. And then food's such a big part of it. I make over, I would say 98% of my own food. I prepare it myself. And I'm super careful, the 2% where I occasionally go out to eat or something with friends. And I think the challenge is, how do we develop, and I bet you've thought about this a lot, how do we develop the right filters for deciding what is best for us? Because I think a lot of folks, when they talk about what they eat and all the things they do that can impact their health, um, when they hear something they want to believe because a company presents it this way, if you eat this product, use this product, do this thing, it'll be the best thing ever. But they're trying to sell something. I don't believe a lot of them, with their conflicts of interest, have the consumer's best interest in mind. And it may be great for a lot of folks, but not for others. For example, if I take one ibuprofen, an NSAID, I start bleeding internally.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of us out there that have that issue. So just because it works for one, it doesn't work for another. So how do we develop filters to make better decisions and stop just believing what an advertisement tells us? Now, sometimes it's with the best of intentions, like the great work you guys, did at your company. But in other cases, it's not so much. What's your recommendation for developing health and wellness filters to make better decisions for all of us?
I think that's a great point. You almost need a nonprofit, right? An organization that is not having any conflicts of interest, or at least um, the least as possible. It's a tricky one because there's so many companies that are obviously focusing on wellness, and the guidelines are all over the place. I do believe that certain companies mean well and want to do good, right? I think I want to be as optimistic as possible, because if we become too pessimistic, life becomes a little miserable. I'm always trying to look at, even if they are for profit, it's like, who are the founders? Do they really care? What's their background? Are they trying to do what's right? And it's hard, right? When you run a business at scale, you want to make sure that you have a certain set of values in place, right? That you will always follow, and those values trickling down to everyone, which is then essentially a great culture that you're building around what you're offering to the public to really make sure that you're always going to do the right thing. You're right. It's like I just saw an announcement around some toothpastes that are now being recalled because of elevated lead in the product. Right, these are toothpastes that are also being used for children. So that's terrifying, right? Did those companies know that there was something in there, or didn't? Maybe they didn't do proper testing. Who knows, right? But I think we have to continue to raise awareness that we can't simply trust the supplement facts, right? Or we can't simply trust what companies are telling us. Further research is needed. And frankly, I think hopefully AI can be very beneficial here, where it can just pull a lot of information together to make sure that we make the right decisions for ourselves on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also very optimistic about the future and what's possible. And my experience says that the vast majority of humans walking around, working in businesses, they want to do good. They want to create value in the world. But there are a few that often float to the top that money overrides creating real value for customers. And I've always thought that, and I get this from you and listening to a number of recorded, podcast interviews with you getting ready for this. But I've always thought that if we really focus on creating value for all stakeholders, customers, team members, suppliers, investors, all that, where everybody wins, and that's the best business case for the most profitability. And I've started 8 companies from scratch. The biggest one I sold for well into 9 figures, and I got a
Amazing.
21.6x multiple of EBITDA in a
Yeah.
space where 8x would have been incredibly strong. We were repairing, overhauling, and manufacturing aircraft parts, had over 500 team members. And I focused on the material value because we need resources to grow and make sure we can survive downturns and all of it. Emotional energy value was the X factor for leaders. I think positive emotional energy is the scarcest commodity on the planet. And we create the environment as leaders from which everybody creates value. And then the spiritual value creation piece, I just think about connectedness there. It doesn't go to religion or anything, but it also can. But all the different programs to strengthen relationships with internal team members, suppliers, customers. We were doing business in 60 different countries, and that was an amazing community, and always strengthening it. And so creating value that way made us the most money, way over those that primarily focused on the material piece. So when people say, "Oh, it's not about the money," but when you really look at what they do, on average, it's 95% about the money. So it feels like virtue signaling in a lot of ways. Um, but when you focus on creating holistic value, and that's kind of the purpose of this podcast, it's my purpose in life is to drive holistic value creation behaviors and actions out into the world. You end up making the most money. So they miss the opportunity and don't see it. So I've said a lot there. Does that resonate with you? And how does this, sort of,
I think that resonates. Absolutely, it resonates a lot, and yeah, you can't. It's just not ethical, right? To focus on just profit margins or revenue generation or EBITDA, and if that comes at the cost of the experience of your customers or patients, it's just unacceptable. So because hair loss was so incredibly personal to us, and because we did everything in our power to figure out a solution that was effective and healthy enough for ourselves, um, we were able to transfer all of that positive energy to our patients and customers over time. Um, I always said to the team, it's like, make sure that you truly take the time to understand what people are going through, because this is an emotional journey. for many, especially for women, because there's a lot of taboo around hair loss and women, which is devastating. For many, it's a loss of identity and very life limiting in many cases. So, um, understanding and knowing that, let's make sure we focus on that only. Because I completely agree with you. When you focus on providing value and not just taking it for granted, it's like whatever was working now doesn't mean it's going to work in the future. Like you have to continue to compete with yourself while listening to the people that you're serving to make sure that the experience, whether it's a product or a service, that is optimized across the board. So that has to be true. That's your main focus. Investors, yes, they're important, sure, um, but at the same time, everything, and you said it perfectly, everything can collapse if you start to lose focus on who you're serving and how you're serving them. The other important piece here, you mentioned community and culture. It's fundamental to that. So I would say I would even focus first on the people inside the organization to make sure that they feel as good and as supported as possible and also as clear as possible so the mission is clear so we can get excited about something. We don't just get distracted, right? Which is never beneficial, right? Making sure that the team is optimized, the right incentives are in place. So when the company wins, everyone wins, right? I'm not just talking about small bonuses. I'm talking about, different ways of thinking to make sure that people are acknowledged and rewarded when things are going really well. I think that's fundamental. So everyone has their life and they want to grow. They want to have more financial stability or financial freedom, right? They've got families to support. So I think that's still very, very fundamental to a business, right? Once that's incredibly healthy and the mission is clear, you can start to fully optimize on how to serve others. And it is a balance and it is tricky. It's not easy, but I'm very proud that Nutrafol's culture continues now also without me, with a new CEO, continues to really thrive. It's an amazing environment to be in. And I think the moment that's true and the values are clear and amazing, that's where you significantly increase your ability to truly be of value to others. And there's no such thing as cutting corners when it comes to health, right? Any service, it's like how many supplements are out there that don't work, or even to what you just shared. Any pharmaceuticals are making these quick claims, right? How it can be absolutely devastating. It's like a lot of those drugs are not tested on. Yeah, they've done some clinical trials, but they're not tested on everyone. So therefore, they do have to make those disclaimers. I feel very troubled about just even thinking about what's currently being sold and offered to people who are suffering health wise, um, and the potential consequences of those solutions.
And you're still the chairman of the board for Nutrafol?
Yes, I'm still the chairman. I'm still involved, lightly involved. I'm supporting the CEO. I'm also supporting Unilever when it comes to any larger M&A decisions in the well-being in the well-being departments. And that's exciting for me because I want to be there for the company. It was my baby. It was a phenomenal success, and I'm very grateful for all of that. But um, other than what we've done together, I think it's important for something to also live beyond you, right? It's hard enough to have a good idea, to pursue something, to make it successful, to then exit and create real value for the people that were involved. But for something to live beyond you in a very successful way, that's also, uh, I believe, a real milestone. And yeah, I stepped down in the beginning of 2025, and the company continues to thrive enormously, which is something I'm very grateful for.
Yeah. When I sold the aerospace company I mentioned to you, and I've sold 3 different businesses so far, that
Amazing.
was 10 years ago, January, and they've grown the brand, they've grown the company. Textron Aviation purchased it. It's doing incredibly well. But I remember before selling it, having a conversation with all team members because I'd have one day a month where I meet with every function, and sometimes we combine functions, but there could be 1 to 200 people in the room at a time. And I asked them the question about selling. Do you think it's a good idea or not? And it took us a year to get to a place where there was only about 2 people that didn't want to do it. But when I started it, half of them thought it was a terrible idea. And at some point, you would exit. But it was important to me, like what you're saying. I wanted it to survive and continue. And then I stayed another 17 months past the purchase to make sure it went well. And it went incredibly well. And a lot of folks there made a ton of money from, the exit. We had 0 outside investors. I controlled all the equity. But when it comes to money, people can get really squirrely. And I was thinking as I was going through it that we all did it together. We should all benefit together going through it. And again, kind of back to that win-win mindset, that way of running my businesses, interacting with others, all the CEOs that I coach, exposes me to way more opportunities that are really cool things to get involved with than I can ever fully do. But if I take the win-lose mindset, which a lot of people do when it comes to money, all those doors just shut, going across the board. So I applaud you for wanting this thing to go, for staying involved with it for an amount of time, so you can take your baby, if you will, and just watch it and be proud of it as it goes on to the future.
Yeah, winning just by itself. Oof. There's something that just does not feel good about that at all, right? And also, as you know incredibly well, having sold businesses and built businesses, it's always the teamwork and the culture and the mindset that gets you there, and the hard work and the determination. So, and then sharing that success. I don't think there's anything better in life, frankly, to share amazing success with the people around you. That's celebrational, and that's when you create also. Um, you're creating a forward momentum, right? Because then everyone is excited to work with you or to collaborate with you or to build something again in the future. It's like the world is full of problems. I believe that entrepreneurship is amazing, and through entrepreneurship we can solve a lot of those issues, and you can do that through building companies, and therefore you need people. So if you continue to just win together, it also becomes incredibly sustainable. I don't think I've seen that a lot as well when just to see the founders or executives, they make a lot of money, they sell the businesses, and then they disappear. It doesn't necessarily feel good to me. I think the future of leadership is kindness and empathy and understanding what people are truly going through, and then yes, creating situations where everyone can elevate their lives and be happy and feeling fulfilled. Power to that.
Yeah. And really, just a fraction of 1% of founders ever get to where they have a company that's valued at over $1 billion, and in the very short time frame that you did it. And my guess is that you were really focused on solving a problem, creating real measurable value, and making a difference for so many people in the world. I think you've impacted millions. That's what did it for you. And I've been involved with a lot of startup communities, and it feels to me like the vast majority of them are thinking about how much money they're going to make, and that's why they're doing it, not a real problem they want to solve. And often I can speak at some sort of a startup event. There'll be all these founders in there, and there could, let's say there's 50 in the room, and I'll find 1 or 2 that sound really interesting to invest in. The rest of them are just looking for how to change their pitch deck so you'll give them money. But you can recognize those that are passionate about really solving a problem. And so what's your advice there for the listeners? Mine's always been solve a real problem, be passionate about that. The money will follow if you really create the value. But how do you advise founders around that?
I think I agree with you that understanding your own level of determination and how truly obsessed and passionate you are about the problem is absolutely crucial. The journey to success is never easy, so you need to be determined. And if you're not determined enough and you're doing things for the wrong reasons, you're going to give up, or you're just going to build something that's good, and that's not great enough, right? Um, but I typically advise founders because it still amazes me how many people are building companies and their goal is to sell them or to take them public, right? And it's like that becomes the goal. And it's like my advice is always just try to build a company that adds value and build it as you never want to sell it. Because it's if you also you're making the wrong decisions, right? You're not gonna you're gonna think short term. You're gonna start impacting the the value that you are providing to your customers, in our case, also patients, if you're starting to think short term. If I was optimizing the company to sell it, then we probably would have made more money because it's quite simple, especially at scale, right? To start cutting corners to affect EBITDA in a positive way, to start showing more profit, reduce the marketing, right? There's multiple ways to show efficiencies, potentially also decreasing the quality of the ingredients at scale. That's enormous, right? Even if we're talking about we're shipping out millions of products on a monthly basis. It's so the scale is there. Small little changes there can be very beneficial to founders, especially upon moments of exit or an IPO. So, and I always said to my team, it's like we're building a great company. We believe in what we're doing. Are we still really adding value? Yes, no, or can we do better? Right? Constantly challenging ourselves. Um, but the goal was never to sell the company. And by the way, that's what the other parties during the M&A process also truly felt. And I think that's also one of the main reasons why the ultimate value that was generated was extraordinary. Because think about it, it's human nature. It's like on the other side, you wanna buy a company. The reason why a large conglomerate is buying companies because they believe in the future, right? They need to show value down the road. They still need to increase its value with three to four times at least. So if your goal is to sell the company and that's failed, right? Then yeah, how does that come across? Now, in some cases it's perfectly fine, but I was very determined and I was convinced that we didn't need a partner necessarily to take the company to a whole new level, which obviously created, as a result of that, some desire, some serious desire from potential M&A partners that wanted to be involved. So yeah, the goal should never be to sell a company. It's like that is that sounds very self-fulfilling, which is fine. I'm not judging it, but that's not how you build something great. You can build something good doing that, and that's fine. But that's we have a lot of problems to solve in this world. There's a lot of suffering that's taking place, and I think we need more founders and entrepreneurs that care about that. And then money will flow. I'm convinced.
Yeah. I've always said make keeping your company an equally good, if not better option to selling it.
Right.
And those short-term changes to try to boost the value of the business, it starts to gut your potential for future value creation within the business. And that's not good. But I actually love, I'm CEO of two companies today. I'm involved with a lot. I've invested in a lot, very close to it. I like being on the front lines with teams creating real value in the world.
Mhm.
And and a lot of people have asked, and I'm sure you probably get this question too, well, why are you still working? It's like, because it's like breathing for me. I want to keep doing this. I like working with teams, and the few companies I'm working with now, in total, we have just a few hundred employees, but I think in a few years it's going to be thousands. And I love that, and I think that's how I stay sharp on being able to create real value. But this concept of you've made a bunch of money, just kind of walk away from creating value and just sit on a beach somewhere or travel. Uh, I would go nuts. Like, it just doesn't work for me. How do you think about that? I love being on the front lines, and I'll be 65 this year. I'll do this until I'm 110 if I can live that long. I mean,
Right.
this brings me joy. How do you think about that?
Yeah, building a company is amazing. You're building a community. I met my best friends throughout that journey. So it's funny how selling a company is so idolized. It's like, did you exit? How many times did you exit? It's uh, it's emotional, right? It's emotional. It's not just about the money. Um, and yeah, a lot of people that I've met post exits are, as a matter of fact, struggling because, and now what? Can I do it again? Because a company, a community, day to day interaction, solving problems together, serving people, there's nothing better than that. So now there's loss of meaning, loss of purpose. Yeah, you've got all the money that's now working for you, but that's got boring quite quickly. So yeah, when I step down, I spend a lot of time thinking about who am I, right? And what do I really want to do moving forward, and how do I want to spend my time, and how do I want to continue to add hopefully value to the world. That is all, frankly, I think about when it comes to business. And it's I've seen a lot of people struggle post exit, um, even serious depression, because when all of that is wiped out, what do you do suddenly? How do you pick that up? So I fully understand and appreciate that you are heavily involved in your companies, and because you're also learning so much by just being around people all the time. It's like, it always inspires me. You learn every day from people, every day. The moment you think you know everything, it's like that's where you start losing. So I rather be with people and help people and collaborate with people and getting involved when it comes to either through investments, or also we're doing a lot of nonprofit work now. You're just learning. You're learning about what's happening in the world, and that's how ideas also come to you. You can't just create something by yourself in a room. At least for me, that doesn't work. So I appreciate what you do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I believe how we feel going through life is everything. And I think it's really dangerous to make your business or even your profession the biggest part of your identity. That's what I think. And so for me, I've kind of
And
landed on
it often is.
it very often is, and it causes a lot of the problems that you're talking to or pointing at. And where I've kind of landed is, look, I want to create this holistic value in the world. I'm CEO of one company called ETW, and it's about helping organizations of all types, nonprofit, for-profit, government, doesn't matter, small, medium, large, public, private, intentionally create more value and holistically, which is a different approach than most. And then the other company is called Dinner Table, and there we're helping families intentionally create value. And it's been kind of cool. In 20 months, we have over 40,000 parents in our community from 67 different countries. And so no matter what I'm doing, I guess where I'm going with this is, if I didn't do those two things, I've got music, I've got writing, I've got all this other stuff. How my thing is creating value in these three different ways holistically. And when I look at your website, Giorgos.io, on the front, when you open up the main page, imagine a world where humanity is thriving. I don't think, if I just look at the United States, and I know you're from Europe or Denmark, uh, when I look at the United States, I don't think we're even creating 10% of the value we could be creating, because we're focused on so many things that don't create value. And so imagine a world where 50%, 60%, dream state 80% plus, the value that could be created is being realized. That's how I think about humanity. And I'm super optimistic that we can move in that direction.
Yeah.
And so that's why I've really been looking forward to this interview with you. But when you think about a world where humanity is thriving, how do you describe thriving? How do you think about that?
Well, it starts by reducing a lot of the suffering that's taking place. And I built Nutrafol in New York City, and New York City is very dear to me. The US is very dear to me. Um, and yeah, it just amazes me how um, there's so much greatness, right? But it's clearly not for everyone, which is quite sad. And that's what I mean by I try to trigger my mind by saying and challenging myself, like imagine a world, right, where humanity is thriving, because it goes back to what we just discussed around companies and company culture. It's like I think wouldn't it be amazing if everyone would thrive in their own beautiful ways? And that doesn't mean that everyone needs to be all equal and thrive at the same pace. Everyone is living their own beautiful lives, and but unfortunately, even in big cities like New York City, there's so much suffering that's taking place, and I'm thinking a lot about this because there's obviously wealth concentration is accelerating at a pace that we've never seen before, and there is binary prosperity across the board, right? So how do you how do you make a difference there? Um, Obviously, these are very complex issues, but just by asking the question and focusing on human thriving, I think is important. Let's focus on okay, who are the people who are suffering, and let's help the people that um, cannot afford or execute on just basic needs. Right? If in one city people are making a ton of money, which I've nothing against, just to be clear. But at the same time, your neighbor is just struggling supporting their children or feeding their children. I think that's not ideal, to say the least. So I believe there's an opportunity as we move forward as humanity and society, and maybe I'm too optimistic here, is to create a little bit more of a balance. But that balance should not happen with force, right? I think there are opportunities where some of the wealth can be redistributed in beautiful and inspiring ways to help others, as you're doing with companies. Um, but right now, those tech companies and some of the companies that I'm invested in, they do extremely well. But the money and the funds and the profits are going to the same people. So these are complex issues, but a lot of the things that I'm trying to think about and make a difference in.
Yeah. Yeah. I work with 5 different communities of families, 2 virtual and 3 in person. And it's really interesting. And I said it earlier, as leaders, I think our job is to create an environment from which everybody creates value. So it actually encourages them to lean into healthy struggle. And what I've figured out a long time ago, and I'm seeing with all these families, when you take struggle away, it makes it worse for them. Like, where does self esteem come from? From accomplishing challenging things. And I think we have a bit of a mindset culture in the United States where struggle is bad of almost any kind. And I look into the families that are, struggling financially and with other issues, and I look at the decisions they're making. So if we just gave them more resources, it wouldn't make it better. Often it makes it significantly worse. So as I think about solving this problem, it's in the area of what's the environment we can create as leaders that causes more and more people to lean into healthy struggle and feel amazing about themselves. And I know it's kind of sarcastic, but if struggle was bad, the less I went to the gym, the stronger and more flexible I would be. Right? I mean, it doesn't make sense. We have to struggle emotionally, mentally, physically, preferably healthy struggles, but unhealthy struggles. There's value to be learned there that we can use to create even more value in the future. But I think it's that, and I've seen young adults that went in, for example, into the military with a nice system, and they were stellar in performance and how they felt about themselves. But on their own, they're back in prison. So it's the environment that causes healthy struggle. And so now we're relying on human nature to cause it, because I appreciate what you said. It can't be forced. And I think the answer is there. And I also think that the scarcest commodity on the planet is that and probably the biggest deficit, we don't have enough leaders that are both capable and moral. There's a lot of very capable leaders that have a win-lose approach to wealth
Yeah.
accumulation and other things that you're talking about. Um, and if we had more leaders like you and thought about the way this world would be completely different, not because we're just handing out things, but because we're creating an environment that encourages healthy struggle. So does that resonate with how you've been thinking about this?
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. I think struggle is indeed amazing, right? What I was really thinking about is intense suffering. Um, right? If you suffer from a disease and you can't afford basic healthcare, it's like it's very hard to overcome those issues, and the negative ripple effect that has on your family and potentially your community, etc. Um, we're doing some very interesting projects. We're building free boxing gyms in New York City, in the Bronx, for underserved youth. These are very some neighborhoods there are not safe at all. You've got children, kids killing each other over social media posts, right? And the bullying that's taking place there. So, um, we when you witness that, it's like, yes, there's struggle, and struggle is absolutely good. But then, how do you help somehow and create an ecosystem, to your point, right? Or structure where at least they can have a chance. Because if there's no chance there, then there's only the chances that someone is gonna go down not great paths is significantly increased. So yeah, how do we make sure that at least we doing our best as a society, as moral leaders, or however we want to identify it, to make sure that we at least acknowledge what's happening and we're all collectively working together to set people up for success in the best way possible. And I know these issues are incredibly complex, but you need to start somewhere. You need to start somewhere, and I like what you're saying a lot with just family support and stability. There clearly is fundamental, and you certainly don't want to just hand either money or things to people. That's not super beneficial. But what are those underlying causes, and how do we help each other um, on an ongoing basis to make sure that can we live at our fullest potential? Everyone has a different type of potential, and that's perfectly fine. But to not reach your fullest potential as an individual, it's like that's a shame, right? So how do we, as we evolve, as things in society are changing absolutely rapidly, how do we make sure we're not just looking at ourselves, right? But we're looking at the holistic picture and recognize that we're all interconnected. And how do we make sure that everyone keeps up somehow, right? So that that level of suffering is decreased. I think it's embarrassing that in a city as great as New York, where there's so much wealth that's being created, that a very large percentage um, cannot afford basic healthcare. Right? Healthcare, I think, should be should be for all. It should be accessible for everyone. Health is all we have. If you don't have your health, if you can't go to a doctor or send your child to someone to get checked up, it's like, how can you thrive, right? How can you thrive if you cannot even afford the basics?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of conflicts of interest, unhealthy incentives everywhere. My personal belief is we could spend half the money at the federal, state, and local level that we are today in government and get more done to create better conditions to work, live, learn, and play for the citizens. It's all of these conflicts of interest, these unhealthy incentives. And so that, to me, it goes back to we need more leaders that are both capable and moral. and then that can make the change. But I'm running at it the way I am. You're running at it the way you are. My goal in the next 3 to 5 years is to have millions of families in our dinner table communities,
Nice.
strengthening the family core and building a
Mhm.
huge community of families that can lean on that practical wisdom. I've
Mhm.
kind of figured out it's going to be really hard to fix it from inside the system, but if I come in from the outside through the family, we can make a giant difference here. So there's a lot of us running at this.
Love
Again,
that.
like you, I'm super optimistic about the future, and maybe I can even grow a little bit more hair. But I was bald about a year ago.
You look great.
Yeah.
You look great. You don't need more hair, but I'm excited about what you're building. I would love to learn more and see if we can create some synergy there. Because at the moment I build a platform where basically a lot of the investments that I'm making, especially in tech and AI, creating outsized returns because of the level of access and being early involved, etc. I'm essentially building a model where I'm creating a perpetual engine to use those profits to fund amazing nonprofits that are either saving or improving lives. So that's how I'm trying to build an ecosystem, right? That is hopefully going to move the needle a little bit. And yes, we can talk about this forever, but um, what I appreciate also about what you're doing is at least you're putting things into action, right? And then hopefully it becomes incredibly scalable, which is great. And if all of us starting to think a little bit beyond ourselves, that's how we're going to make the world a better place. So I'm
Yeah.
excited.
And if we can create a financial model, and you've talked about this, the money part needs to work along with the impact that's sustainable and we can grow it. All that has to happen. So again, back to material, emotional, spiritual value, all in balance. I published a book which released last Friday titled "Value Creation Family" that describes this whole process, what I'm doing here, and
Nice.
I'd love to stay in touch on this because you and I are going after solving for the same problem. I think there's a solution,
Yep.
and if you're willing to continue conversations, I would love to do that.
I would absolutely love to do that. And I think you are focusing on some root fundamental issues. And that includes, by the way, family, right? Families that are not stable, um, and yeah, children as a result of that not being set up for success. It's like that alone can, if you can make a little bit of a difference there and support there at scale, that's the next generation hopefully um, are going to be able to look at things um, look at things a bit more differently, right? And in a more great way.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible. I came from a very troubled family. Kicked out of the house at the beginning of my senior year in high school. Parents charged up debt in my name because they couldn't get money on their own, so they had my social security number. It was
Wow.
bad, but I went from negative financially to multi-generational wealth in my short time here. So if I
Mhm.
can do it, anybody can do it. But I think what we're getting at is how do we modify these incredible limiting beliefs that so many families have? And so I'm really going after that foundationally. Georgios,
Love to hear more.
I could talk to you for hours, days, really, and we're out of time. Are there any final thoughts for our listeners you'd like to share?
I think we hit on a few important points. Yeah, I think it goes back to how do we come together and focus on some important issues, and how do we make a difference there. Yes, as an individual, there's only so much you can do, but once there's focus, and I realize that with Nutrafol as well, once there's a clear mission and there's focus and there's no distraction and you don't give up, that's how you drive change. And I think we can tackle a lot of those issues um, as a society. So I'm really excited about that. And as you mentioned, I'm also very optimistic about the future. And I know that sounds, weird with a lot that's going on, but we have to stay optimistic. And I also think that there's a lot of amazing people out there that want to do great things and are doing great things on a daily basis. So how do we highlight those people in a beautiful way so things can become a bit not just positive, but also just much more optimistic, because this is a lot of the negativity is currently being highlighted, and that's not good for the soul. So yeah, I'm excited, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing, and I would love to stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you. And if our listeners want to learn about your work or connect with you, how can they do that?
They can go to my website, giorgos.io, giorgos.io, or Instagram is working quite well as well. Just Giorgos Tsetis, my last name, Tsetis. And yeah, I'm always looking forward to connecting with great entrepreneurs, great founders, great companies, nonprofits, and people that want to make a difference.
All right. Well, thank you again for your time. This has been fantastic.
Thank you, Lee. Appreciate you as well.
All right. And this has been the Show Your Value podcast. If you got some value out of today's episode, please like and subscribe. And until next time, show your value to the world.